In this video, you're gonna watch my conversation with Samson Mow. He's a Chief Strategy Officer at Blockstream, which is $3.2 billion company. And Blockstream is one of the biggest crypto companies in the world, and now they are building tools and ecosystems around Bitcoin. So we talked about Lightning Network, Liquid Network, mining, satellite, the problem of smart contract platform, energy consumption of mining, hash rate concentration, and also Infinite Fleet, which is the blockchain game that Samson and his team has been building. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, Samson.
Hello, Yusuke.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming to the show. I'm super excited to have you on my show because first of all, I read your background, and then you have such a interesting experience, like a gaming industry, then crypto industries as well. But also you've been doing chief strategy officer, at the Blockstream that's been innovating in this blockchain, especially Bitcoin space. So I'm curious to know all about it today. So yeah.
All right.
Awesome. So maybe before going to that, nitty gritty of what Blockstream is. By the way, I'm not technical person, and also my viewers are not super technical as well. Maybe it's gonna be good to kind of make it simplify as much as you can. But maybe to start the conversation, could you maybe tell us your story about your career? What was your career like? What led to this incredible, exciting kind of career industry? So.
Sure. So I guess I started out in game development. I was the manager of the balance department at Relic Entertainment, working on Dawn of War and Company of Heroes and a lot of other games. But what that group was doing was basically fine-tuning it and making the game fun to play and fair to play. So we worked on real-time strategy games. You might know StarCraft. It was more famous than some of the games that we did. But it's really important that all the different factions, they're all balanced, right? So that one faction doesn't just beat another faction outright, and the other faction can't push back. So we were really in charge of making sure the game was playable and interesting and fun. And then after that, I joined another startup doing a website building platform. It was called SiteMasher, and that was acquired by Salesforce. Then after that, I joined Ubisoft in China, and I helped them set up their studio in Western China. So this was in 2009, I think. And there was not a lot of game development happening in Western China, so we spun that up and built up a studio of 100 plus people. And then I launched a bunch of games while I was there, focusing mainly on mobile and web games. So I did a social game called The Smurfs & Co. And that was the most popular social game that Ubisoft ever did. So we were competing with EA. EA had a game called The Sim Social. So back then you look at Facebook, the ranking, Sim Social, and then my game, The Smurfs, was they're all in the top 10.
Wow. Okay.
But it's really funny because I knew EA had a studio in I think it's Playfish in Beijing and also California doing their game. And it was probably maybe 50, 60 people. And then my team doing the Smurfs was 10 people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I thought, I can probably do this outside of Ubisoft if I wanted to. And we actually did some interesting partnerships. We launched the Smurfs & Co. and another social game called Castle & Co. on Mixi, the Japanese social network.
Mixi.
Too.
No way. Okay.
Yeah. So if you Google Mixi, the Smurfs, then you'll probably find some information about that game.
Awesome.
Yeah. So then I left Ubisoft and I decided to start Pixelmatic. And that's where it kind of gets interesting. So while I was doing Pixelmatic, I read about Bitcoin in depth. I found an article talking about Bitcoin mining, and I kind of started going down the rabbit hole. And then an opportunity came up to join my friend's company, BTC China. It was the largest exchange in China. So Mt. Gox imploded, and then all the people went to BTC China. So for a long period of time, BTC China was the exchange and the biggest in the world. Right. So I was the COO at BTC China. And then I was doing Pixelmatic the whole time. I left BTC China to join Blockstream in 2017. So that's my history.
Oh wow. Okay, that's super interesting. I was kind of curious about this. It's such a from outside perspective, like non-technical person perspective, like a game development and Bitcoin mining is like, well, Bitcoin is kind of different thing. Like what was it that really makes you think that's, oh, this is it? Then like you basically left the career as a game industry, right? Then move into the
I'm
new one.
still doing games.
Oh well, but
But
oh, that's true. That's true. But like, yeah, you kind of like a shift the also split the focus, in the direction. Like, what was the thing that like a first time you think like, wow, this is gonna change the world, or?
Because when I first heard about Bitcoin, I only knew of it as a currency. Like I read like a lot of the mainstream media headlines. People are using Bitcoin to buy drugs and do black market deals and things like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't really dig into it further. I thought it was just like a e-money, and there have been a lot of e-monies in the past, or even virtual currencies. Like in game development, every online game typically has its own economy with its own currency, right? So it wasn't that interesting to me at first until I really dug into it, and on the mining side, because that was when I realized that anybody can participate, and the supply of Bitcoin is not controlled by any one party, but by the rules of the network. So that's very different from, say, a game. So I've done a lot of online games in my career. And typically, we need to worry about the economy. We need to worry about inflation. We need to worry about the price of items for sale, and just making sure everything works. So we're kind of like the Federal Reserve, right? As a game developer, we're trying to manage that economy. But with Bitcoin, there's nobody that does that. It just exists, and it functions based on the predefined rule set that Satoshi laid out, and that's it. And nobody can change it. So that was very interesting to me, because I thought that's never existed before. And when the opportunity came up, I just had to jump on board and go full steam, kind of like you.
Yeah. Awesome. That's it. That's really interesting. So yeah, obviously, we're gonna after this get into this block streams, doing like mining services and everything else. But also just to touch on the game side, you're building infinite fleet, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Infinite Fleet.
Yeah, so that's gonna come out soon in the future.
It's already out in alpha, so people can buy ships and play the alpha, and the beta will be coming out Q1 next year.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Thanks so much for share. And let's get into the Blockstream. What you do, and I wasn't too aware about like in depth about like what you did, but like when I actually dig into it, like I realized I was bombarded with this information about the tools and technology that you guys are building. Maybe could you give us a little bit of like a brief overview of like what you're building?
Yeah, so Blockstream does a lot of things, as you've discovered. We like to say that we are a Bitcoin infrastructure company. So what that means is that we're building a lot of things on top of Bitcoin to augment Bitcoin, to make it more resilient, to build more tools that let people use Bitcoin in new, innovative, and permissionless ways. So I guess the company was founded off of the sidechains white paper to develop sidechains. And the first iteration of a sidechain from Blockstream is the Liquid network, which you may have heard of. Not to be confused with the Japanese exchange called Liquid.com.
Yeah.
But this is a network.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do work on the Lightning protocol. We were one of the first implementations of Lightning in the wild. We have Blockstream Satellite, which is a service that's broadcasting Bitcoin blocks from geosynchronous satellites in orbit to the Earth. So right now, as you're sitting there or listening to this, then you're also getting bombarded with blocks from the Bitcoin blockchain. You just have to have a satellite dish pointing to receive them. We have a number of wallets. We have the Blockstream Green wallet for power users, and Aqua for iOS currently for beginners and more novice users. And we have Blockstream Mining too, our mining division, where we just announced recently that we were going to build our own ASIC. And we also have Blockstream Finance. We acquired a hedge fund called Adamant Capital, which we're rebooting to do a number of financial products. And one of those products is kind of the intersection of mining and finance. And that is the Blockstream Mining Note, or BMN, which is a security token. So that is very popular, and I think we sold out our last tranche in about 2 minutes. So there's a very high demand for innovative things built on Bitcoin. But everything we do is on Bitcoin. We don't touch altcoins or any other chains or crypto tokens or anything like that. It's all about extending Bitcoin and extending the functionality of Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's very, I realize the focus on the Bitcoin for sure. And when I see the product, especially, maybe we can go maybe one by one. The Lightning Network is the one that maybe a lot of people have heard of. And that's basically increasing, that's a side chain. And that allows Bitcoin to be more processed much faster. And allows people...
Lightning is not a sidechain. A sidechain is a blockchain without its own native currency.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at there's a lot of chains out there, right?
Yeah.
And they all have their own currency, which they sold through ICO or various means.
Yeah.
Liquid and a Bitcoin sidechain does not have its own native currency. There is no concept of tokenomics or anything. So the currency of Liquid, the native currency of Liquid, is still Bitcoin. You lock up Bitcoin on the main chain, and then you unlock it on the side chain. So as there are 21 million Bitcoin, you could only ever have 21 million Bitcoin on the Liquid network too. Yeah. So there is no additional token that you use. You transact Liquid Bitcoin, you pay for transactions in Liquid Bitcoin, just like you do pay a Bitcoin transaction with Bitcoin. But the difference is on Liquid, we have assets, and these are all confidential by default. So you can issue stable coins. We have USDT, Tether. We have a Japanese yen stablecoin issued by our partner Crypto Garage in Japan. And we have a Canadian dollar stablecoin and a euro stablecoin as well. But you can also do things like game NFTs. My game Infinite Fleet is doing NFTs. Light Night, another game, is doing NFTs on Liquid. We have an art website that you can mint and trade and auction off NFTs as well. But you can pretty much do a lot of things on the Liquid network. Now, the Lightning network is different. There is no chain. Everything is just a peer-to-peer network. So when I transact with you on Lightning, there is no record of that. Only the settlement ends up being broadcast to the chain. And that's why Lightning is highly scalable, because you're not burdened with that need to have a blockchain. So it's commonly misunderstood that blockchains can scale. And a lot of the altcoin projects typically push that narrative, but it's actually impossible to scale a blockchain and be decentralized. Like, you can reduce the decentralization down to having it as a cluster of Amazon servers and achieve very high throughput, but then you're still a very bad, poorly designed database, right? So I think one thing is that a blockchain must be decentralized, and you should be able to run your own node. So everyone can run their own Bitcoin node down to a Raspberry Pi as a requirement for the hardware. And it's the same for a Liquid node. You can run a Liquid node on an old laptop or a Raspberry Pi too. But without that element of decentralization and the end user being able to run a node, it's not really going to be a blockchain for long, right? It'll just be centralized into Amazon or Azure or some server farm, right? So the Lightning Network is the way to scale the network. We can achieve throughput of maybe 25, 30 million transactions a second. And that's just something that could never be done on a decentralized blockchain.
Wow, okay. That's a significant difference, even compared to, like, for example, like Solana or like anything that we hear recently. So that was one thing that I wanted to kind of ask. So for example, the El Salvador started to use the Lightning Network, right? For the transaction. Then I was thinking, so that's like 6 million population. And then, so what if like an entire world decided to use, let's say America decided to use the big Lightning Network
So then to what extent, this Lightning Network, can handle. So if entire population decided to use that, then like can it handle, or is there like a certain limitation?
Yeah, I think Lightning and Liquid is the technology that will allow us to use Bitcoin on a planetary scale for day-to-day transactions and micro and nano transactions.
Oh wow.
So it's got to be a combination of these technologies. So we often say Lightning is a layer 2 scaling solution, and we say that Liquid is a layer 2 as well. But here's where it gets really interesting, and I hope that your listeners can follow along. But on top of a Liquid asset, you can actually create a Lightning network on top of that asset. So if you have USDT, Tether, you can actually create a Lightning network on top of Tether as well. So, any asset in the network can typically have this massive throughput that would allow anybody to use Lightning, right? You can have Lightning networks also on top of Liquid Bitcoin too. And I think in the future, maybe 3 to 5 years down the road, we'll just see it being unified in a wallet. So you won't need to think about, am I making a Bitcoin transaction on chain? Am I making a Lightning transaction or a Lightning transaction on Liquid? The wallet itself would take care of that balancing for you, right? It would handle most of that heavy lifting and complexity, because Lightning also it's reaching a lot of people right now. It's being adopted by a lot of people, but it's still very complex, and you need to do things like rebalance channels. But I believe all of that complexity will be abstracted away from the end user down the road, so that it would just work. So you could think of it like back in the day when we first got the internet, right? We have to dial in, like use dial-up, right? And then if the dial-up connection is broken, you have to redial. It's just not a fun experience. But right now, we just have constant internet, right? If you're using the internet on your phone, you might be using LTE or 5G, but you're also on your home Wi-Fi. And if one of the two drops, the connection doesn't drop. It'll just flip over to the next one. So I think that's the best analogy for how Bitcoin wallets will function in the future. It'll just work. You won't need to know anything about the details behind it. And you'll just transact Bitcoin. And 10, 20 years later, you won't even think that you're transacting Bitcoin. You'll just think, I'm transacting money.
Wow, that's a really good analogy. Like it's really easy to understand that. So okay. So Liquid Network, and can issue asset. Then each asset can have Lightning. So theoretically, like each asset can have like the millions of like a transaction per second. So like it can scale to be used globally, and it's so okay. So let's say that happens, right? So a lot of people started to issue a lot of tokens, or lot of assets. What about this? So this is the part that I still like try to like wrap my head around, like the smart contract part of it. Like for example, like a DeFi or like NFT marketplace and all these things happening on Ethereum, because it's smart contract platform, right? And that kind of thing also can happen in this like blockchain ecosystem as well in the future, or like is that like a different thing?
Yeah, so I think Ethereum has a very good marketing department. They've kind of co-opted the term for smart contract.
Okay.
And they've kind of expanded that definition to mean that you write a JavaScript contract and you embed it into the blockchain. But I don't believe that method is very scalable. So we've worked with a partner in Luxembourg called Stoker. They originally were building their platform for security tokens on Ethereum. But they very quickly discovered that it's not a viable solution, because to whitelist a new investor that would allow you, Yusuke, to invest in project X, then they would need to spend at sometimes $100 in network fees to update that smart contract to whitelist you. But if you were only investing $100 into this project, then basically like nobody made any money. It just was washed away in the network fees, right? And also, the Ethereum style of smart contract where you embed the entire thing in the chain is not really a practical method. And they know this too. This is why a lot of these Ethereum smart contracts have a backdoor or a shut-off switch, because they actually need it to be mutable. They need it to be changeable, and they need to have an emergency off. So at the end of the day, you're making a very complex system that doesn't really function well in either capacity, right? It's not scalable, it's not efficient, and it doesn't even do what it's being marketed as doing. So within the Liquid ecosystem, our approach is to do a lot of that complexity off-chain with a policy server. So if we take the example of a security token, then we have this product called Blockstream AMP. It stands for Asset Management Platform. So we handle a lot of that policy for investors, like whitelist, blacklist, vesting of shares and whatnot, all in a normal server. And we enforce those policies through a Bitcoin multisig contract. So a Bitcoin multisig transaction is a smart contract. You're taking an outside input to determine if it should be executed or not. And smart contracts in Bitcoin are actually native to the protocol. Unlike Ethereum, they're kind of bolted on. So you actually have a far more efficient and reliable method of doing these smart contracts in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and it's more efficient. So if you're an investor in Project X, I need to add you to the whitelist. I update the policy server, and then the policy server says, yes, Yusuke, you can invest, you can transact, and then the policy server will sign off in a 2 of 2 multi-sig contract and allow funds to move.
Okay, so you're saying that, so this, what's being done in, for example, other platform like so-called, well, for example, like Ethereum or Solana or something like that, can also, similar, platform and services also can happen in that ecosystem.
Yeah, so you can do it in different ways. Either you take the approach where I need to embed everything in the chain, or you take the approach where I just want the smart contract execution. I don't care about the contract itself. But there is also a smart contracting language for Bitcoin and on Liquid called Simplicity. And I think you've probably seen it on our website.
Right.
That's developed by Dr. Russell O'Connor, and it will bring some degree of that type of smart contracting to this ecosystem, but it's still not going to be writing something in JavaScript and sticking it in the chain. I guess it would be more lower level than that. So there are benefits and trade-offs in a way if you like doing a JavaScript contract, but I think there's also the risk of doing it the Ethereum style, which is attack surface. And we see that all the time in the DeFi world where, this project got hacked, that project got hacked, this one got hacked every week. And it's because when you're having a JavaScript programmer, maybe a web developer, write a legal contract, that's not really a good mix because, first of all, they're not a lawyer thinking through the legal logic of that contract. And second of all, they're a web developer, not a protocol developer. So they're probably not writing it in a very secure fashion. And that's what we see, but it seems to not matter. So
I see. Wow. Okay. That's super interesting. I didn't expect that like this kind of thing is possibility in the future. So that's super exciting. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, so I always see this argument about Bitcoin, whether this is like a store of value, like a gold 2.0, or like in a currency. And then when I was looking at this product line, like it seems like you guys are trying to make it so that Bitcoin as like a global currency in payment. Is that a kind of stance that you're in?
Well, I think Bitcoin is all three things. It is a store of value, medium of exchange, and a unit of account. So often, I think there is this narrative like Bitcoin is one thing, it's not the other, but it is really all three things. You just have to look at it on the correct scale. So you do see on-chain transactions where people are moving billions of dollars like through the network, right? They're doing a single transaction and they're able to move an immense amount of dollar value through that network. And that is a medium of exchange. There was this narrative during the scaling debate, block size wars, whatever you want to call it, where Bitcoin cannot be used for buying like coffee, right? But now we can do that with the Lightning Network. It did not make sense to use Bitcoin's main chain to buy coffee. It might have worked when Bitcoin was a couple of years old and no one was using it. Because when no one is using it, then the fees are very, very low, right? But if you want everyone in the world to buy coffee on the Bitcoin main chain, it just won't function. It's just not possible. And that's where Lightning comes in. And nowadays you can buy coffee in El Salvador with the Lightning Network, right? So it's just looking at it on the right scale and on the right time horizon. And the unit of account side, the unit of account for the Lightning Network is sats. So when people talk in like, send me a Lightning invoice, they're talking all in sats. And I think the potential for Lightning is really, at the end of the day, micropayments, but also nano payments. So machine-to-machine payments. Paulo, the CTO of Bitfinex, was talking about this, saying, his fridge can order him a bottle of wine, or his light bulb can do that, right? But he's joking in that regard, maybe. But the truth is, like, you could have, an internet-connected device pay another internet-connected device to do something. Or even pay for its own electricity use, or there's like a number of use cases, and Lightning is what enables all of this. And there's no need for minting some token to ICO. It's just using Bitcoin without any additional bells and whistles.
I see. Wow, that's super interesting. So, right, today even like I think Yahoo News today, just like 30 minutes ago, like I saw the news saying that Taco Bell will probably accept the Dogecoin payment like soon, and then like the argument basically was around like, for the maybe Dogecoin may be the global currency. Elon Musk always talk about that, right? And then XRP maybe, or like Stellar. There's certain things that are trying to be like global currency, but like from your perspective, that's gonna basically encounter like a fundamental issue where like centralizations and scale and all that. Safeties and scalability. All these things basically not gonna happen in that.
Yeah, well, a lot of these things are not even decentralized. Like Ripple XRP is not decentralized at all. It's just run by a company.
Right.
So you might as well just use PayPal or Western Union.
True.
Dogecoin is merged mined with Litecoin, so it doesn't even have its own blockchain. It's just piggybacking on top of Litecoin. So I don't know. It's like the world's in a very weird place today, and people like Elon Musk, who you would hope to add more clarity, are just making it more confusing. So I don't think that's good.
Okay, that's a very I can feel that. Okay, so I think that's a really interesting talk about Lightning and Liquid, but I want because time kind of has gone by, so I want to kind of get into mining side. Maybe could you tell us what you do, because I know that like you've been putting a lot of money like acquiring companies and all that. So can you explain like what you provide, and then what you're trying to kind of solve?
Right. So for Blockstream, we have our mining division. We do some of our own prop mining. We also do hosting. So one of the things that we wanted to accomplish was to help other people get into mining. So we built our enterprise grade mining operations. We brought on clients like Fidelity, Reid Hoffman, and then Galaxy, BlockFi. So we have a number of big customers. But the thinking was we want to provide hosting so that people that may not be mining otherwise would be able to get into mining, because setting up your own mining operation is a very labor-intensive, capital-intensive endeavor. You need to source the power at a cheap cost. You need to build the facilities. You need to buy transformers, and you need to operate it. And this is not something that everyone can do. And I think there are companies that are trying to improve the offering to retail miners. And I think Upstream Data, Compass Mining, they're doing a great job on that front, bringing it to the masses. But when we started in 2017, our focus was on getting bigger institutions in that may otherwise not be mining. And for me, the motivation was to get more people to have skin in the game, because this was coming off of the block size wars, where Bitmain was gathering up a cabal of mining operations and exchanges and trying to impose their block size increase on the network, which is very dangerous, because if you can change one thing like the block size, you can also change the cap of Bitcoin, right? You can double it to 42 million. And then Bitcoin just becomes meaningless. So, mining has always been more esoteric for most people. I think it's changed a lot lately with the advent of a lot of the public mining companies in the US, right? It's become more accessible, if not directly accessible. It's more accessible. But yeah, like coming off of the scaling wars, it was an important lesson that more people need to start mining. It's really not enough that you buy Bitcoin and you hold it if you've outsourced the security of the network to someone else that may be a bad actor and may try to attack the network, right? So the more people that are mining, the better. And having Blockstream as a miner, not just a software company, was an important step in that direction. And I think we kind of tilted the scales and started this revolution of people getting into mining.
I see. So is that probably coming also from, for example, people say like a centralization in mining a while ago, like, it used to be China. That was also like a concern of yours as well at the time?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, China does have capital controls.
Yeah.
So mining is just another way to get Bitcoin. You're buying Bitcoin with electricity. So so having worked at BTC China and having experienced the exchange crackdowns, you can kind of tell where things are going, right?
Right.
If you couldn't see it coming, then you probably weren't looking carefully enough. I think it happened sooner than I thought. I thought it would have lasted a few more years, but it seemed to have accelerated a lot.
It seems like everybody was kind of shocked.
Yeah.
Like now, but everybody knew it, but like, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think I knew it was coming, but I didn't think it would happen, this year. So that was a bit of a surprise. But I also didn't think that nation states would adopt Bitcoin so soon too. So things happen a lot faster in the Bitcoin universe than you think.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like it's important for people to get into mining. It's like even companies like MicroStrategy that are accumulating masses of Bitcoin, technically they should be mining too, or there is a degree of risk that we experience the same kind of attack on the network as in the fork wars.
Yeah. So when you host the mining, a majority of where is it like a geographic like a the area that you're kind of operating the mining mainly in the US?
We started in Canada and then expanded to the US. But yeah, our main sites are in North America, in Canada, and the US. And we've got about 300 megawatts. So that makes us one of the largest miners in North America.
Yeah. I was thinking like that's a really great news when I see the hash rate actually, like in the US, at least I think July, went up after Chinese ban and on all that. So I was like, oh, that's great. Then I started to see like all my, actually my friends started doing that personally too. So I was like, oh, this is amazing. And kind of also, but also at the same time, like this extreme ban is going to push the mining to like another extreme, probably maybe in the US. Then like when I look at the US, I thought like, oh, is this gonna be okay? Like the regulation's gonna probably maybe come in the future. So like, do you think that this concentration, from my eyes, it looks like, a lot of mining is shifting to US. Do you think that's going to pose another risk or?
Well, it's in an ideal case, you have miners very geographically and geopolitically dispersed. I think there is becoming a heavy we are getting a heavy concentration of miners in the US now.
Yeah.
But it is not as bad as having all of it in China, I think. I think after the China exodus, a lot of hash rate has moved into a lot of places. The US is still a popular destination, but we're also seeing a lot of mining operations being set up in different geopolitical regions too. So I think currently our distribution is pretty good. I think we're going to keep seeing more in the US, but I don't see that same risk of heavy regulation in the US, just because there is strong rule of law in the US. If you have, I mean, for let's say power purchase agreements, like if you have power purchase agreements, they can't just be nullified, right? And I don't think that there could be a ban enforced on mining. It's just it's outside the realm of what I can see being possible in the US.
I see. Yeah, so when I see so my friends, I think he's been doing like a mining from the garage kind of situation, move back to parents' house and doing the mining and all that. But he was telling me how much he concerned about this infrastructure bill in America, and they the Senate passed that. Then the House will vote on 30th, I think day after tomorrow. Then most likely probably it's gonna go pass. Then the problem is, I think my understanding is that the term broker will be that's a really broad term. Then that might actually include the miner. Then that's gonna so the miner have to provide certain information about the customer, and then report something all the information to IRS. So do you think that what's your view on infrastructure bill? Do you see potential impact on crypto industry, especially mining, also maybe Blockstream?
Yeah, so the infrastructure bill is interesting. I think it still needs to go to the Senate, and there's still time to fix it.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like the general atmosphere is that it is fixable. But let's say, for example, it wasn't fixed and it did become law. I don't think anything would happen, because it's impractical. You might interpret it and understand it in a certain way, but if there is no way to enforce it, then it doesn't really matter, right? It's just impossible for a miner to know who their transactions are, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
I don't think that they would crack down on a multi-billion-dollar industry because of some ambiguous law that says, you as a miner have to know whose transactions you're mining. That just seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, practically it's impossible for miner to provide that information. Then, so yeah, I can. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective too. Cool. Okay, so the mining part is that. Then I also wanted to kind of learn about this satellite that you touched on, and what could you maybe explain a little bit more about that, and what can we do with that, and then how it's related to kind of a other product like mining or a lightning, and how it fits into the ecosystem?
Yeah, so the Blockstream satellite service is primarily to provide redundancy to the Bitcoin network. So in the event that an undersea cable is cut to a region, it's possible that that region would split off from the Bitcoin network if there's only one internet cable into that region. But as long as one person in that region were to still be getting the Bitcoin blocks from the satellite service, they would be relaying that to every other Bitcoin node within that region. So you would prevent this network split. For us at Blockstream, it makes sense because we're investing a lot of resources and time and energy into building on top of Bitcoin. So we definitely don't want to see network splits if we can avoid it. So having Blockstream Satellite acting as a redundant network and making us not reliant upon terrestrial internet is a very important step in achieving that robustness and resilience. The other more practical part is also very cool, but the practical part is that we can use that service in our own mining operations. So we have containerized mining solutions that are fully autonomous that we can deploy anywhere around the world. So technically, if there is abundant power in the desert and there's no internet, we can actually start mining there. Just using the satellite service and broadcasting blocks we find over another satellite uplink. So the Blockstream satellite service is one direction right now, just getting the Bitcoin blocks, but that in and of itself is a lot of information. It's maybe 5 or 6 gigabytes a month, right? So you don't want to be downloading that over a small satellite uplink, right? But or downlink. But what you can do is get that from the Blockstream satellite service. So you get all the big data coming in, and then you just use the satellite uplink or even SMS or 3G phone to broadcast the blocks found. So you get the torrent of information coming down from the satellite, and you just have a small internet connection to broadcast the blocks you find. And that really opens up mining to take place anywhere. You don't need to have internet to set up a mining operation.
Wow. So technically, like people in Africa, or like maybe somewhere in the desert, or in a mountain, maybe can also do that.
Yeah, or that's the extreme example. But even as a more practical example, it could be a fallback. So let's say you have internet outage, then you just have like a 3G connection and the satellite dish, and your mining operation will still function, right? Like it's a worthwhile insurance policy because downtime or offline time will cost you money. So spending a couple $100 to get a satellite connection through Blockstream Satellite is well worth it.
Wow. Okay, that's super interesting. Yeah, that's really exciting to be able to see the potential of like even more decentralized, the mining situation too. So kind of going back to like the mining side, I wanted to kind of touch on this because this is a hot topic everywhere I go. Environmental issue that people bring up, and like for example, what is it? Even in America, right? The Elizabeth Warren was saying that Bitcoin use more energy than the country, like Argentina or something like that. So I dug into the the data, and I figure that it's not really Bitcoin is not really like like it's kind of like evil eyes, right? Like in a sense, that's what I felt. But like, I'm curious about your opinion. Like, how do you respond to that kind of narrative?
Well, I think that's just a lazy argument from lazy people. Like, you can compare anything's energy consumption to Bitcoin, right? Like, or you can compare energy consumption of one thing to another country for anything. Like, clothes washers, dishwashers, clothes dryers, Christmas lights, like those things all consume the same power as a small country. Because when you aggregate all worldwide demand of this small thing, it adds up to a small country, right? That's just a really lazy, intellectually lazy argument. And I think the more recent one I saw was a Bitcoin transaction is the same as throwing away 2 iPhones or something like that. Like any of these comparisons of something of Bitcoin to something else is just lazy. They're not able to analyze it independently of its own. But the root cause is that they don't see value, or they're trying to attack Bitcoin. Because if you see value in something, you don't find it wasteful, right? Like I see the renaissance of the financial system and money as very valuable. Like I'm happy to spend more energy on Bitcoin than we are right now. Like right now, I think we're at 0.5% of worldwide energy consumption or less. But having sound money that no one else can corrupt is well worth that, in my opinion, right? It just depends on your view of what is useful. Like you can take a road trip somewhere for fun. Is that useful for me? No, but it's good for you, right? Because there's value in it for you. But no one will criticize that because it's just accepted. Like people will do things and burn gas even, right? They're not using an electric car, but it's all okay because it's something that they want to do. So it's just a really weak argument. I think unfortunately that argument is amplified by some people like Elon Musk that don't really know what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because I think Bitcoin is changing the world, and with that change will change that underlying perception that Bitcoin is wasteful, right? Like the monetary fiat money system with banks, with ATMs and everything like that consumes probably an equivalent amount of energy as Bitcoin does. But nobody says, that's wasteful because they want to use the ATM and get their money out, right? So as everything shifts and as nation states adopt Bitcoin, that just that narrative will just fall away. It's just too weak to stand on its own.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I look into this Galaxy Digital research paper that they released on in May, I think. They said the bank uses like a 250 terawatt hour a year, then gold is 240, and Bitcoin is 120
Yeah.
terawatt hour.
These are all estimates too, right?
Yeah.
And they're not. It's very difficult to get an exact number. The irony here is that you can probably get a more exact number for Bitcoin than anything else, right?
True.
And that's because Bitcoin is so transparent. You can look at the hash rate. It's something that you can see, and you can run some simple calculations on what type of miners compose that hash rate and what their consumption would be. But if you really try to estimate the energy for gold production, I've seen it at 120, 140, and then the 200s range for terawatt hours, right? And the point is, it's very difficult to quantify, and it's just easier to quantify it for Bitcoin. And that's also why it's easier to attack it too, right? Because you can say like that's a lot of power because you can calculate it, but it's also because it's transparent. But the funniest thing is with these critiques of Bitcoin energy consumption, you can't really ask them what is the right amount of energy for Bitcoin to consume. They'll never have an answer for you, right? Because they haven't thought about anything on this regard. Like, what is the right amount of money for a monetary system to use annually? They won't know. If you ask Elizabeth Warren, she'll be like, what? Next question. They won't know because they haven't thought about anything like this. So it's just, they're just looking for engagement, or they're trying to further their own agenda to virtue signal. I'm very green and I care a lot about the environment, so therefore I'm going to point at Bitcoin and say it's bad.
Yeah, that's a dirty side of politics. So everything is politicized. So anyway, so that's the people like me who have time. I have free time all day, so like I can just Google and look up the information, right? But I can see like regular people, who work day and night, and then while kind of keeping up with Bitcoin, I think it's really difficult to be updated in the right with the right information. Like, is there? I was wondering, like, is there any recommended maybe information source that you normally like quote from, or because like there's so many like a noise and like wrong information. How can we, reach to the like right information from your perspective? If there's advice.
Well, I think the mainstream media outlets are not helpful. A lot of the noise comes from that.
Right.
I think look for like Bitcoin podcasts that focus on Bitcoin. That's the best signal in all the noise. There's a news site that I invested in called BTC Times, and that's really focused around Bitcoin news. So it's btctimes.com. I think this is the only way to go. But the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is you don't need to follow up on what's happening all the time, because it's just money. All you need to know is there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin in existence. Nobody can change the monetary policy, and it will be there for your descendants, your kids, your grandkids, and their kids. And that's it. Like, you don't need to read up every day like what's happening in Bitcoin if you don't have time to do that.
I like that. Awesome. And I actually realized it's been already 1 hour ish, and so I wanted to kind of move to the closing kind of end of that video. But maybe could you tell us what's like a roadmap, or like what are the things that we can kind of like look forward to coming from Blockstream side, like maybe this year.
Well, this year's tight. We've done a lot of announcements already, so we've just got to finish executing on some of those things. Like, one of the interesting things was a solar mining partnership with Square, Jack Dorsey's company.
Oh yeah.
And hopefully we'll have some progress to share before the end of the year on that. We have some new people building on Liquid that will announce those things in the coming months.
That's exciting.
But I think next year is going to have a lot of interesting news because next year we'll be launching our own ASIC miner in Q3. It's called the Blockstream Hornet. Ooh. And that is being built by Spondyles, the ASIC chip designer that we acquired out of Israel. And I think that's going to make some headlines when we push that out. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of other interesting financial products being built on Bitcoin that we'll be announcing next year as well, I think.
Awesome. Okay, so if your product is also is designed for regular like individual investor or like institutional, for example, money.
I think our goal is to have them accessible by more retail investors.
Retail investors.
Right now, the BMN has a very high price for each note. Mm-hmm. This is just to meet the qualified investor laws in Luxembourg, where we're issuing it out of. Mm-hmm. So each BMN is, I think, 240,000 euros right now. So it's a bit out of reach for retail. Mm-hmm. But we're working on some ways to lower that. Yeah. But the next wave of financial products we want to offer, like our Alpha Fund and possibly Bitcoin-backed mortgage products, will be hopefully aimed and accessible to normal users.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, actually, this channel is actually seen by so many people who actually run the companies. So maybe if someone who's watching this interested in it, I'm gonna put all the information down below. So please go there and contact to the their sales team, and awesome. And also, Infinite Fleet. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's Alpha is still open, right? And people can buy NFT. By the way, I really like the Starship designs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Infinite Fleet is in alpha and beta is coming next year. We are raising money with a security token offering, and that's also available through Stoker, our partner in Luxembourg. And we're also planning to do a capital raise on the new Bitfinex Securities Exchange. So that will be coming in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, like these are all accessible by normal users. So the Luxembourg offering, we have a prospectus. So European investors can invest down to a minimum of $100. So it's very accessible. Our goal for Infinite Fleet was that our players will be able to invest. It is an MMO game. So typically when you play an MMO game, you're committing for a good couple of years, right? You're investing in your character and building everything and building out your social network. So my thinking was that we would want our investors to be able to invest $100 and also play the game and take part of this equity in the company.
Oh, interesting. So it's not like a typical what's it called, like play to earn game, right?
Well, there are elements of that, you could say.
Okay.
Because we're replacing the game currency with a crypto asset. That's called INF.
Yeah.
So the security token is called EXO. Yeah. And then the utility token is called INF. And INF is only earned from playing the game, like World of Warcraft Gold. We don't sell it to the players, and this is kind of firewalling the two things, right? You have the utility, which is just purely earned by player activity, but it happens to be a crypto asset format that they can take out of the game and do whatever they want with it. And then for capital raise, we're using a regulated security token. So I think this is the ideal model going forward. Rather than a lot of other projects that try to sell a utility token and say, they're buying something to use in the game. But, I think you're kind of straddling some securities laws when you're trying to do that.
Yeah, sounds like a little bit gray. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, I think we want to keep it more on the straight and narrow and be very clear what is utility and what is the security. And we also have NFTs. So the ships that people are buying now will be NFTs. They're not currently. So our focus is to make the game first. It's always about the game. A lot of other, quote unquote, blockchain games, they just try to make the blockchain part first and then bolt the game on after. And I just don't think that ends well because people are not coming here to, well, maybe they are, but I don't think people should go to a game just to, play with the blockchain token, right?
Yeah.
And make on-chain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, it's about the game. So we're going to roll out the system to assign the NFTs to the players in the next few months. And the NFTs are really just to facilitate player-to-player trade, so that you have the game currency INF, and then you have your ship as an NFT. You can perform an atomic swap on the Liquid network where there's no trust involved. So the transaction either happens all at once or not at all. And I think that's just to empower the players at the end of the day, so that they can trade amongst themselves without needing to trade on our marketplace.
Awesome. So where is the best place to get those information? Twitter is the best place?
You can check out the website. It's infinitefleet.com, and the Twitter is the same, and also on Facebook as well.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna put all the Blockstream, but also the Infinite Fleet information in the below. So if you're watching and interested in that, please go check it out right now. So I guess it's been an hour, and I know you're so busy. So again, thanks so much for spending time with me. And then I think there's so many Japanese communities are so happy to just hear, I feel like, we see the glimpse of the future of the Bitcoin from this conversation. So
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yusuke.
Yeah, thanks so much. And if there's any update, please feel free to come back and directly talk to the Japanese community. So thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.